What's up everybody, Ryan Suchit here and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 7 things that you should warn your customers about before you start running Google Ads. And this is just to kind of answer their questions ahead of time, put their mind at ease, and just help with your overall management process. So let's dive in. The first one is the famous Googling yourself. So I always tell them about this ahead of time because they always Google themselves and they say, hey, I can't see my ads, right? And that could be for so many different reasons. You probably just started running the ads, your bids might not be high enough. They might be in the wrong geographic area. They might be on their cell phone and the tower is outside of the geographic area. So there's tons of these things, what could be causing this. And it could just be too early on. And it also could be that they keep on Googling themselves over and over and over, and then Google eventually stops showing ads to them. That's usually what I tell them. The reason is because, we all know they're getting impressions, they're getting clicks, so people are seeing the ads. So I always warn them about this. I say, look, if you want to know if your ads are running, you could use the ad preview tool. I don't usually bring that up, but if they really want to see that it's running, I will. But I mainly just talk about, clicks and impressions and how it takes time to ramp up and why they shouldn't Google themselves again for the reasons before of Google's probably going to stop showing them to you, or it could be the geographic and that type of thing. But I always tell them about this up front because every single customer, one of the first things they do after you onboard them is they start Googling themselves like crazy. Some even click and don't understand they're getting charged for it. So something I always bring up. The next one is call tracking. So you probably would have done this before you onboarded them, but I always like to warn them about 2 things. Number 1, their phone number is going to change to a tracking number and they shouldn't freak out, because this is done on purpose. And usually I put their mind at ease because I say, look, your customers aren't going to see this pending you're not doing branded ads. But I say, this is just for new people coming to the website. It's not everybody. It's just tracking, new prospects, which is usually the case. And then I also bring up call recording. And I usually in my onboarding form, I ask for permission. Do you want us to review the calls? Can we record the calls? That type of thing, just so everything's transparent. I do that up front. Next one's optimization score. So I definitely get this from clients when I don't warn them about it. They say, hey, I'm only 40% optimized in my Google Ads account, right? I hate this feature from Google. So I every week I make sure I'm in clients' accounts and I'm dismissing them as we all know as managers that they're not that important most of the time. But I always warn customers about this. I say, look, this optimization score, you're going to see it. Sometimes it can be very low. Don't concern yourself. Google really wants to sell you on all kinds of stuff that's not going to work. You all know the drill, but this is one of the things I like to warn them up front about. Google reps, another one I warn them about. I really try to get my customers not to hop on these phone calls. And it's usually helpful when you do it up front. It sounds a little defensive when a customer says, hey, a Google rep wants to help us. Can you get on a call with us? And then at that time, you're like, no, right? It just sounds defensive. But when you tell it up front, before you start running ads, say, look, this always happens for all our clients. Google tries calling them, telling us we're doing a bad job. We need to go more automated. It's just a lot more professional and your customers will believe you a little bit more that, it is true. So something I always like to do up front. Metrics. So this is another one I really like to focus on because the most famous one is cost per click. A lot of customers are super concerned with cost per click and how much they're paying per click. And they always have this number they think it should be in their head. So I really try to transform that conversation into conversions, leads, profit. And I talk about how, the cost per click is going to change over time, especially at the start. Like it's going to be all over the place. So again, it's just better to talk about this up front and tell them which metrics they should focus on and, not focusing on them at the start because they're going to change all the time and more so at least after your monthly report. Then look at the metrics you're choosing to show them because that's ultimately the ones they should be paying attention to. So another thing I like to talk about. Expectations. So this is a super vague one. I could probably do a whole video on this. I probably will in the future. But essentially it's talking about how they can get in contact with you, right, up front, right? You may be a freelancer, you might be super busy, and you don't offer monthly meetings. So I like talking about this before I even sell them, right? I say, look, if you're looking for the typical agency that's going to have weekly meetings with you, I'm not your guy. But with me, you know, I'm really good at my job. I'm the one managing your account. It's not a revolving door of account managers, blah, blah, blah. But I always like to talk about how they can get a hold of me. And then, of course, results. So depending on the industry, the market, all these types of things, I always try to talk to them about expectations and waiting a minimum of 30 days. Because if you don't do this, a lot of customers will email you after a day and say like, hey, what's going on? Like, I haven't got any calls. And it's just, it's brutal getting those calls. So you have to really try to do this up front and tell them things take time. At the start, you're in testing mode. You're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. And you're letting the data come in so you can make proper decisions, right? And if you make these changes too early, it actually hurts the account, right? It needs to be statistically significant. So I always really push them on this, and I say, give it time. Let's reevaluate at the end of the month, that type of thing. Some of them will still reach out to you earlier, but at least you've already told them upfront things are going to take time. And then ramp up, which is tied to the other one. So we all know what ramp up is. For those of you that may not, it just seems that there's this unwritten, rule or thing that's not documented anywhere in Google, but for some accounts in some situations, it just seems to take a little while for things to get better, right? Whether that's getting impressions, clicks, getting good impressions, good clicks, which people don't talk about. I've seen that as well, where they're getting volume, but they're getting the junk at the start, and then it gets better. So there just seems to be, for some accounts, this small ramp up period. So again, telling the client, don't panic at the start, like everything's new, we're testing, we're optimizing, and just mentioning it might take some time to ramp up the bids. Even outside of what Google's doing, just your bids, right? You might be starting low on purpose to see what price is the sweet spot, right? So I always like talking about that. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you can find your way back. See you in the next video.